Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased to share with you a project that I realized with a former student, now a dear colleague, about feedback tubes. Is something that we did from 20, it's a little bit old, but still it's the first time I have the chance to present it, so I hope since it don't have to do directly with keyboards, it still will have a relationship to the topic today. So a couple of words about how this work started. That was a project initiated by Beat Kiesen, who's a composer based in Basel, for a project related with tubes of any kind. And he approached me asking if we were interested in realizing any kind of electroacoustic instrument related with tubes. What you see right now is more or less the final staging of a project that contained several pieces by different composers, including myself and Nicolas Pinzi, who was my collaborator. We did that together. And you see on the left side sketch of a huge object, a kind of sculptural object that would include a socket in the lower part where you could integrate different instruments. You will see some photographs later on, and you see on the middle the way it was constructed in the Kunstmuseum Basel, and this sculpture that has more a visual aspect, not an acoustic aspect. In the lower part, we were able to integrate different instruments, as you see, and for instance here, it's not in the lowest circular space. You should see it's barely visible one of our feedback tubes. Anyway, and you see in the center the kind of stage that was created with this object, and different pieces were presented there. That was also in Zurich, and we have a third project presentation in Lausanne. What are feedback tubes? Feedback tubes are tubes that are that contain a feedback network, a microphone and a loudspeaker, and a control unit. So the microphone and loudspeaker are coupled through a sounding, vibrating air column. And this air column, let's say the frequencies that are allowed to, that sound are defined by the length, and of course also the diameter has a relevance there too. And there is a control unit in order to, be able to have a stable frequency. So the idea, we started developing different prototypes at ICST in June 2018. You see on the left side Nikki and our first prototypes were done with PVC, I don't know how to say that in English.
PVC.
PVC, thank you. PVC tubes, so that you use in normal construction, very cheap things. Materials that you get everywhere, and we started to put some loudspeakers and drivers inside, and microphones. This prototyping developed with different materials. You see on the left side our second prototype. We did different comparisons, trying to understand the relevance of the materials, the relevance of the size, and the behavior. And you see on the other photographs our first rehearsals for one of the pieces that I'm going to present you, at least a fragment of that today. Miao Cao, who played the clarinets, and Stefan Melotti, who played the trombone. There were further developments of this project. The next development done by Niki Butzi. You see, for instance, tubes done with paper. So paper is enough for generating an acoustic isolated space where this feedback can occur. And you see on the left side, which is interesting, you even can use one single driver to make the feedback. So the idea is very, let's say, very modular, and you can do different variations of that. You see here on the right side, let's say, this position with 4 of that pipes. There were further developments, and I'm glad about that, because the project was intended as a generic instrument that other people can appropriate and develop further. And that happened then in Frankfurt at the School of Music, where they developed, you see, a different prototype. Niki was working there and developed with the students a different variation of it. So the feedback tube is a concept more than an instrument. It's a concept for an instrument. It's a computer-controlled electromechanical sound generator. It is modular and adaptable and can be built with different materials, largely available everywhere, and with cheap components. So you don't need high-end drivers or microphones. Let's say the characteristics that you normally need for that kind of components in the context of live electronics are not applicable, are not necessary here. And the signal fundamentals for controlling the network are very simple, so it can be self-programmed. Meanwhile, there are different versions of control units in MaxMSP, in PD, the sound generation, as I said, is a feedback network coupled through an air column. So it's an air column vibrating inside. This generates sinusoidal standing waves within the tube, right? And the interesting, I think the most interesting we found in the development is that it was possible to obtain any combination of all the modes, the modes being the fundamental and all the, let's say, harmonics up to 16 or 18 harmonics, that you could generate from one tube. You could obtain any combination of those modes. For that is necessary to build to split the signal. I'm going to explain this a little bit. But let's say the frequencies, of course, the possible frequencies are those defined by the length of the tube and as a fundamental and the overtones. So the tube acts as a filter. It's a resonator that acts as a filter, allows certain frequencies to appear and reject others. When you see this, let's say the overall time that is needed for the signal to travel from the loudspeaker, from the microphone to the loudspeaker, including the control unit, that the latency, also all those times play an important role, since they generate phase shiftings that you have then to compensate in order to get the single modes. And what we were doing was putting the network, connecting it, having a control of the loudness, and starting to work to change the delay. And by changing the delay, we were able to hear the single modes vibrating. And that was, let's say, the main discovery. All the signal unit is intended to control this, let's say, selection of the single modes in order to have a stable sound and in order to have somehow a stable frequency as well. The materials are also related to sound generation, of course. The materials themselves and the physical components of the network might have also some additional relevance on the spectrum. The spectrum, different than a additive synthesizer, where you have let's say a sinus tone, those sinus-like tones generated by the feedback tube are in somehow also changing and varying a little bit, depending on the material, depending on perhaps other vibrating sound sources close by. So there are a lot of small things happening there which make the instrument especially interesting. So the components are the tubes, the microphones, and of course the loudspeaker or drivers and amplifiers. The material and form are less relevant. So of course there are some differences if you have a tube of metal or of PVC, but those differences are not so extreme. As I was saying, by the microphones, things like signal to noise ratio, which are normally important by microphones, or directivity or linearity are not decisive. If you have a cardioid or a different type of microphones, it don't make a difference. Most important is the frequency response, the kind of the frequencies that you are able to transport through this microphone, and the sound pressure level. The same applies for the loudspeakers. You don't need high quality loudspeakers. It's just a question what frequencies can be performed with a loudspeaker. I don't want to be too technical. Just to say that, let's say, what we do is that we split the signal coming from the feedback in a number of channels that corresponds to the number of harmonics you would like to have. If you would like to have 16 harmonics, you split the signal in 16 channels and treat every channel differently. With amplitude control, you check the latency, and with a delay tune the system in order to get a specific harmonic. It is also a filter applied to the frequency that you are expecting to hear is also very useful in order to let's say, to stabilize the system. If you have further questions about this, we can come back to that. For the project I was presenting at the beginning, for this collective project, we did, Niki Buzzi and I, did two pieces in collaboration. One was I had a concept and I wrote the instrumental part, and Niki conceptualized the second piece, and we worked both pieces then together. It was a collaborative work, something that I never did before. I'm somebody that writes his own pieces alone, so that was a nice sharing experience with him. Both pieces were commissioned by the festival site Räume Basel 2019 and were performed there in September. Now you see, let's say, this is what you find in my score, in the score of Lot, and the piece for clarinets, for clarinetists playing three different clarinets, sopran, bass, and double bass, clarinet, and trombone and electronics. We use 5 different tubes. You see those tubes labeled with alpha, gamma, phi, eta, and delta for pitches close to A, E flat, G, F, E, and D. I will show you the exact pitch and the tunings. What you see on the setup is what I already explained, and on the right side for the feedback control, you see, let's say, the signal chain that I was explaining before. You see the signal, if you look from the bottom to the top, you see the signal is coming in, is split in this case in 18 channels. I'm using 18 harmonics. I'll go up to the 18th harmonic, and then you have the input gain, the delay control, the filter, and let's say all the components needed to stabilize the signal. You see on the right side, on the bottom, you see the way they were integrated in this huge sculpture that I was showing at the beginning, right? And more or less the proportion to players moving around. And there were also there is also some live electronics additionally involved in the piece that I'm not going to go on detail right now. The piece you see here also a spatial disposition that I was used for the first performance at the Museum in Basel. The Roman numbers are the parts for the clarinet, are 5 parts, one based on the pitches of one single tube, and in between those are the Arabic numbers, are the short pieces played by the trombone. So the trombonist would start on the left side outside and would move during the performance. So the spatial disposition is changing. Perhaps we are now coming to what is perhaps more interesting in this context. So you see here the pitch set, the tuning of the tubes and the pitch set. So I decided to have a disposition of 5 tubes where the fundamentals are 3/4 tone apart. So this pitch set is generates somehow arbitrary, or let's say this disposition of the fundamentals generate somehow arbitrary pitch set, which of course had some densities close to the single harmonics, right? And in the lower part you have less pitches, and the higher you go you have more pitches. And there things become quite interesting because you have let's say different possibilities for similar pitches. If you see, for instance, if you look at the alpha, at the highest, at the shortest tube, and you look at the 9th harmonic, which is a B, right? And then you look in the next tube, in the G lower quarter-tone G, you will find that the 10th harmonic is close by. So you find pitches that are very close to each other, and I think since we all love beatings, and that's why we do that kind of things, you can imagine that you find different ways to generate beatings between the different harmonics of those tubes at certain points, and between the pitches that are being played by the acoustic instruments. So at the end, let's say, and that's something I was thinking by seeing your presentation, Pablo, today, is that when we envision instruments like this, the pieces, at least in a first step, have to do with exploring the system, right? And this is something like this. I will play you the first part of the clarinet piece. you will hear some utterances, unexpected utterances. That happens when you play pieces in public spaces. But please ignore this, and this is a short excerpt of something like 2 minutes. Okay, so this is the first part for the clarinet. There are 5 parts for the clarinet, and in between some interludes by the trombone. What you see are what you heard are 3 sequences. There is a model which is clear at descending, are based on descending harmonic sequences. You see the pitches that I'm showing here are, let's say, the 18th, the 13th, 12th, 10th, 7th, and 5th harmonics are as the main pitches used for the clarinets. With and the other the signs that I'm marking with the green circles are, let's say, the corresponding pitches from the feedback tubes. So, for instance, the first sound that you hear is the alpha, the highest tube, the shortest one, the 18th harmonic, which is sounding all the way until bar 6, where you see beside the cue number 3, you see a minus alpha 18, which means at that point this tube, this harmonic is taken off. So in this way, I'm adding, for instance, if you look at bar 3, I'm adding the 13 harmonics and the 14 harmonics from the next tube, and so I'm kind of instrumenting, I'm kind of mirroring what I'm doing with the clarinet, which is based on specific, let's say, descending harmonics, and I'm then choosing some pitches within the set, within the pitch set, in order to extend and to generate, some harmonic interactions between the tubes themselves and the tubes and the instrument. So this is a very, if you want, spectral approach. I have been writing pieces with microtones for several years. There are some pieces for 2 pianos in quarter-tone pieces, the same in an orchestral set with 2 pianos and 2 harps in quarter-tone pieces. I have other pieces, recent pieces, using also keyboards to mirror, for instance, a quarter-tone accordion. So using similar strategies as you guys were doing here with a e-piano. But this is, of course, more based on pure intonation, right? So, and the different interactions of overtone rows. Yeah, I think this is I think this is a good point to stop. I had a small fragment of one of the trombone fragments, but I think we can use the remaining time for a couple of questions, so that we are somehow in time. Is okay?
Here's the question.
Yes, please.
Small analog setup here. Close enough for jazz. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Muntz. I'm here from UC Berkeley, and as ever, I always change the names of things at the last minute, and I came up with a better name for this presentation this morning, so I'm calling it Expanding the Bag. And this concerns my use of this instrument, which is called Primorski mech, Istarski mich, something, depending on where you're at. Different words for it, it's all the same thing, and it's a bagpipe from a particular region of Croatia called Istria, which is this peninsula here. It's not so far from here, people are perhaps familiar. Has anybody heard of the Istrian scale? You have? Okay, you're hip. I mean, you don't count, you're from there. So, all right, so the question is, what is the Istrian scale? Allegedly, it's the system that this instrument plays in. It sounds something like this. So yeah, kind of weird sounding. Maybe not for all of y'all, because you know, you have open ears, but usually when I present this to people, they're like, that's folk music, that's traditional. Anyway, yes, this is how they play music there, but it's not just on the bagpipe. People also sing like that, and they play these things. And I was told I had to open my presentation with this, and you're going to see why. All right, what, play it? Oh my God, no. Play it, please. I'm going to have to do this manually. Where did it go? Here we go. Oh, I didn't do the thing. Sorry. Wait, let's get back to start. I'm sorry about this. You know, technical difficulties, we gotta have it right. Okay. Yeah, well, let's do this. Volume was here. Right? Okay. Please don't deport me for that, but anyway, I spent a lot of time in Croatia and I heard this stuff and it kind of freaked me out and I fell in love with it, so I started playing this instrument. So the question then comes back to, well, what is this Istrian scale, right? If you go to Wikipedia, it basically says that it's like a diminished scale moving in two voices. It has been kind of reduced to this like kind of modal concept. But as you can hear, here it's actually a bit more complex than that, and no one really knows what it is. And actually, the official name that's agreed upon by scholars is the so-called Eastrian scale, because nobody can actually agree if it exists. So this is a recording, this is another example of this, of some of this music. This is something I recorded on the island of Graz at the International Bagpipe Festival. And these are these two women who will sing a folk song, and I'm just gonna play it and then I'll talk about it. So, what is going on there, right? So I actually transcribed the notes they were playing. I'm gonna go back actually. And you can see here that they're basically singing consistently these 250 cent like sub-minor thirds, basically a minor third minus a quarter tone, right? And they're hitting these over and over again and holding them like a consonance. And these two women, they're from this village Orlet, which is up in the hills, and they still have this oral tradition of singing these intervals in this way. You can find videos of them. They would sing every year at this festival, going back years and years, and they sing it the same every time. So there's clearly something that they're hearing here. There's some kind of embodied practice, if not a theoretical concept, which they're tuning, and it's something that's much more interesting and complicated than just like a diminished scale, right? Yeah. So what is this? So I'm basically what I'm going to do in this presentation. I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm going to present a little bit on how I theorize this music, and then I'm going to show you ways in which I have adapted this instrument and some of the tuning concepts from it for some ensemble music, and then look at possibilities for working with this stuff with microtonal keyboards. A little out of order here. But anyway, so I felt that basically there has to be a just intonation explanation for this. And this is drawing on people like Lamont Young, who his whole concept is that only just intervals are able to be tuned by ear, right? If you're singing things, if you want to sing the same interval with somebody over and over and over again, mathematically, because just intervals are the only ones that have a rationally reproducing periodicity, they're the only ones that you can like physically tune by ear, right? And so I think it's much more valuable to look at the vertical relationships between the two voices rather than like a horizontal modal concept. And this was just like kind of a hunch I had. And then I was doing some digging, and there actually is an article in 1929 by Božidar Širola, who was basically the first ever Croatian ethnomusicologist, and he said the same thing. He said that there are some, quote, unknown and undiscovered ratios that are generating this music, and that he doesn't have the equipment in 1929, whatever, to accurately measure it, but it's basically creating this, some kind of just music, which is, according to him, especially different from conventional just intonation. And you can see that that's because of the types of intervals that are coming out of this. You have these very narrow minor thirds and wide seconds, which you don't get with our conventional like intervals lower in the harmonic series, right? You have to ascend basically up to above the 11th harmonic until you start seeing these intervals. So things like that 250 cent minor third, that could be expressed as a 13 to 15. There's other things like the 7/6, like classic, what do you call it? Septimal minor third could also be expressed by 12 to 14. So you start to see the prevalence of these particular series within the harmonic series, right? 11, 12, 13, 14. And what's very interesting is that this basically points to this music being rooted in a fundamental, which might not even be part of the scale that's being sung, right? Because if you were to play 11, 12, 13, at the same time, if you play it loudly or with like distortion through a guitar pedal or something, it will generate the low C because of the periodicity tones. Anyway, I have examples of this. So this is not to say that like these women here are like calculating it out, you know, like the ancient Greeks and their tetrachords and all that. No, I think what's more likely is that because this is a practice where people sing together their entire lives, like these two people have been singing since they're little girls. Unfortunately, one of them died a few years ago, and the other one said, I'm not singing anymore because I don't have anybody to sing with, right? So this is something, and this is common across the Balkans, of people basically dialing in a singing sound with a partner over the course of their lifetime. And probably what they're doing is they're chasing after a timbre. They're looking for a particular blend of the voices, and these intervals are what produce it, right? So anyway, enough of that. Now we're going to talk about some of my music. So a few years ago, I wrote a bunch of music, which I released on this record called Phantom Islands, and I have CDs. You can have them for free. I need to get rid of them. And so basically, this was my approach of trying to integrate this tuning system of this instrument with a ensemble, and I approached it through a just intonation thing, and I can play like a little bit of this so you can, actually I'll explain first. So what ended up happening is I was just messing around with this and a guitar that I had tuned to, I tuned the open strings of the guitar to a bunch of partials of the C harmonic series, and I realized that it totally is harmonized by that, right? Even though I don't have a C at all on here. And if you see here, this is the tuning of this instrument, right? So you see I have a sharp C flat or B and a flat D flat, but no C. But somehow it worked with this tuning of the guitar. And let's go back and you can hear it a little bit. Etc. Right? So I kind of stumbled into this accidentally, and then I started to try to figure out why. And it turns out that basically a bunch of the notes on this are very close to these partials of the harmonic series, right? And if you look at, in particular, which ones are the closest, you go here, it is this set here. The G, the A flat, and the B flat is very, very close to this 12, 13, 14 set of the C harmonic series, right? And because those were close enough, I could also fudge the F sharp. I could kind of like blow it down, like underblow it a little bit so that it could line up with the 11th partial. And what happens is then I have these intervals where basically the chords I'm moving between 12, 14, 7, 6, and 11, 13. So basically the core of the chanter here is this 11, 12, 13, 14 series. And so basically by taking these notes that are shared between the mech and the guitar and then adding additional notes that you get from the natural harmonics of the guitar strings, and then adding a couple other just like fretted notes that would not be expressed in just terms, I came up with this sort of like group of pitches that make like an extended system. So this is a system where like I can play all my notes in this and it'll sound good, but then it can also modulate to other zones, stuff like that. So it kind of pushes it into new territories. Oh wait, let's hear that. So this is actually an example of you're going to hear in the horns are playing this like 12, 13, 14 pulsing thing that kind of creates the feeling that we're in C, and then I'm going to play a version of the same song those women were singing over it. So. The pulsing is the harmonic series there. creates this feeling that there's like a drone, even though that this is not a drone-based bagpipe, right? And what's cool about that is that that approach, it allows me to treat the 12-14 as one harmonic zone and the 11-13 as another one, and move back and forth between them, or it can just be one big like harmonic soup that we're stuck in, right? So that's one approach, and that's basically kind of what got me started on trying to figure out how to use this with other instruments. So another approach I started doing was messing around with 36 divisions of the octave. And I actually first did this with a piece for 2 guitars. So it was 2 guitars that are offset by 1/6 tone, right? So therefore I have 24 notes of a 36 tone set, which are kind of like unevenly distributed. And that allowed me to get these like differently sized minor thirds, stuff like that. But something I did last year, which is more relevant to us here, is I wrote a piece, 2 pieces actually, for the Alois Haba 6-tone harmonium in the Museum of Musical Instruments in Prague, for the Mech and that. And I really wanted to explore it because that 7/6 or 12/14 interval, that's basically very, very close to like 266 cents, right? So that's like a minor third minus 1/6 tone, right? And I thought that, okay, these septimal intervals could be cool to figure it out. What's interesting is that a lot of the other intervals don't line up at all, right? Because there's no quarter tones on this system. I would need to go to 72 tones to get both the 6th tones and the quarter tones, right? But I found it a lot of interesting kind of contradictions of kind of trying to fit this over a grid that didn't quite line up, right? Similar things to what we've heard today in these pieces. So I'll just play a little bit of this so you can hear the sound. Also, timbrally, they sound very similar, so that works too. I thought, that's cool. There's some stuff there, right? But I still feel like that a just intonation approach is the kind of the way to go for this. And it's sort of paradoxical because people say the conventional wisdom is that equal temperaments, they're easier to use because you can modulate, right? You can move these shapes around. But the thing about this is that like this is basically stuck in the same place, right? So what's more interesting to me is using these intervals to then generate a wider intervallic set, like what I was doing with the music for guitar and ensemble. And just intonation does that because I can form pure intervals like off of these intervals, right? And so I was thinking about a way to work with this pitch set and also open it up to other things. And I came up with this system, which I called the volcano-futuristic tuning, because the idea, it was originally inspired kind of by all of these like Balkan pop musics where they're playing the crazy synthesizer solos and stuff, and like a lot of times they're detuned. And so I wanted to have something that could both render these pitches and some of those kind of like fake Macam-based systems. So as you can see here, we have this lattice. And what I did basically, I just took chains of pure fifths, going up a fifth and down a fifth, right? From the fundamental, and then on the 7th partial, the 11th partial, and the 13th, which is like the same sonorities that I'm getting from this, right? And then I did that in the overtone direction, and then I just inverted that entire structure. So this is kind of drawing influence from Harry Part's, the idea of you have a U-tonal system and an O-tonal system. And then what I did is I mapped this onto 2 keyboard manuals initially. So the idea being that both keyboards have the C, the F, and the G. They're shared pitches between them, but then all the other notes are different. And in the lower manual, which is going in the overtone series, everything is lowered. All the pitches are lower than where they should be. And then on the higher undertonal system, they're all higher. And what this does actually is you have a totally inverted system on each manual. And my idea was basically that you could perhaps use the overtonal manual to play harmonies because they're much more stable, and then use the other one to play melodies. And I kind of developed this as part of I was in a microtonal composers club with some people over Zoom, so I kind of made this and I presented it. And I never actually ended up writing music in it, but I theorized it out. I've made a list of all the possible triads in the 14 perfect fifths. There's some interesting comma things too, like for instance, the E flat on the upper keyboard is actually a little bit higher than the E on the lower keyboards. You have these interesting comma relationships. But I never really got around to writing music in it. But it's okay though, because my friend Philip Golub, who's a pianist and composer in New York, who is a member of this club, he actually did. And I'm really happy about this, and I wanted to share this just because it's not just me, right? This is something other people can use, and if anybody is interested, I can send you all the documentation, whatever. But he made an interesting change to this, in that instead of mapping this onto two manuals, he mapped it onto one manual and alternated each tuning every octave. But what's interesting is that not all of the octaves are contiguous. So you see here, the bottom staff is what he's playing, and then the top staff is the tuning system, and he's using hedgy accidentals here. I don't know who can read them. I can't really, but I can fake it. So basically, what's important is you can see here on the middle of the second staff, this octave repeats itself, right? You have the same, the same register, but then the two tunings, one octave after another. And the reason he did this, was so that he could basically play these comma things really fast, by going between octaves. So this is an interesting idea, perhaps. And so you can see that here, in the sounding pitches, you have this these two different B flats next to each other, and in the played pitch, it's crazy. And I can send this. He gave me a rough mix of this recording. I can send it. If I don't have time, then I don't have time. So yeah, I don't know. Should I take questions now? Should I be done?
You can take questions, or maybe people are interested to hear a little bit of the recording. It depends, because we have about a few minutes for questions. But maybe people are interested in hearing the recording.
Are we done at 4?
Technically, we're a little bit behind, so it should be done at 4:15 in total. But the next presentation is a video presentation with no questions.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little bit of room.
Okay.
So it's kind of up to everybody else what they're more interested in.
Yeah.
Are you in contact with any theorists of that region that has spent some efforts to connect this with proportion theory or some other methods of being a variable that could be mathematically tuning? Or is it just a oral tradition of those musicians, so they don't really know?
There are people, I don't think there's anybody who's really theorizing this in terms of just intonation currently. There are theoreticians who are looking at the variations in the tuning, because it's not standardized at all. And there's other people who want to actually standardize this.
So if an instrument builder wants to build an instrument like this, he needs to know actually what to follow.
No. So traditionally, these are always made just by whoever's playing them. So there's no standard way of making it. There are people in Austria who basically want to standardize it, kind of like what has been done with bagpipes in Bulgaria, for instance, to kind of make a standardized tuning, so that you can compose for it and make ensembles. And part of my interest in researching this as a just intonation tradition is, I think, with it by approaching it in that way, we can preserve, there's a certain modularity and flexibility, that we can go after the same kinds of sounds, but change, for instance, the resolution depending on where we position it in the harmonic series. And also it opens it up, I think, to not simplifying the tuning into equal temperament, because that's what really has been done a lot. Because if you approach it as a modal system, as has been done by musicologists and composers like Ivan Matić Ronjigov was kind of the first person who did this back in the mid 20th century. Then what happens is it becomes a 12-veto system, and I think that's not good because then you lose the character.
So I'm interested and curious, what's your opinion? What follows what? So the singing follows the instruments, or vice versa?
That's actually a point of controversy. I would always assume that the singing is first, but there's some people who say the bagpipes could have been first. I don't know. My gut says the singing is first, just because you could. That's probably where it's more easy to find these interesting intervals when you're singing, right? And then the instruments could mimic it, but within the village, right? So a village 5 miles away might do it completely different.
Yeah, but there is an overall statistic, common statistic.
There's common shapes, I would say. There's common shapes, but the width of the intervals varies widely. Yeah, so that's it, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Farzad Milani. Thanks for having me at the conference. Sorry that I couldn't make it to be there in Graz to present my research in person, but I will try my best to do it through this video. So today I'm gonna talk about the Persian 17-tone system, which might be familiar for some of you, but if I wanna explain it from zero, it is like a system that could be seen as an extension of the 12-tone system that we have on piano. So everything works pretty much the same, except that we have 5 extra tones within the span of the octave. So if we get so deep into it, in reality it is a little bit different than what we have on 17 EDO, because in 17 EDO, as most of you are familiar with, everything is divided equally, right? Whereas in reality, the intervals that the musicians use are very precise, specifically for the perfect fifth and fourth, which are the anchor points of the scale. So they should be respected. Their exact values should be reached without any compromise. Except that the other intervals are pretty much acceptable in the values that we get in 17 EDO, comparing to the ones that we have in reality in natural harmonic series. So after studying a lot of manuscripts, old manuscripts from the 13th century onward, including the more recent ones and contemporary ones, I came across the idea that this system, the Persian system at least, is a 13 limit system. If you are familiar with the limits in the natural harmonic series. So in theory, the tones that we have in this scale is a combination of the Pythagorean fifth and 13 limit intervals. I'm gonna explain it at the end of my video, but before that, let me show you my bubble diagram. So that's the thing that I generated myself. And I try to show the place of the intervals, the 17 tones with bubbles in this diagram. So as you see, we can have 3 options in each scale degree. So this is the first note of the scale. This one is the second scale degree. So this one is third. This is fourth. This is fifth. This is sixth. This is seventh. This is octave. So theoretically speaking, everything is pretty much the same as the ancient music theory. So if you are familiar with that topic, everything is centered around the keynote or drone or whatever, which is called meze in Greek music. We call it shahed in Persian music. So it is usually considered to be the fourth scale degree. If you start counting from C, it would be the note F. So that's the centering point of the system, or centering tone of the system. And then from each side we have one tetrachord on the bottom, and usually another tetrachord and a whole tone on the top. Or in another version, it could be a pentachord on the top. So basically a combination of a tetrachord on the bottom and a pentachord on the top. That's the whole thing that we have. Except that there are a lot of delicacies and the details that might be interesting or not for you. But I'm trying to explain the theory here. If you go through the possibilities that we have in each scale degree, so let me compare the interval between the first note and the three options that we have in second scale degree. So this would be our stepwise intervals, right? So when you go from C to D flat, the sounding would be familiar for you probably. It is a semitone. Or if you go from C to D, it would be a whole tone. Okay. In addition to these two qualities, we can have a third one, which is called the neutral tone. We call it a mujannab in Persian and Arabic music. So if I wanna compare these three qualities, actually the system that I'm using now is 17 EDO on my piano. So the size of the semitone is a little bit smaller than 100 cents. It is something like 70 cents for semitone, and then it is 200 and something for the whole tone, and then 140 something for the neutral tone. I should double check the exact sizes, but I'm sure you got the idea. So this one is a minor second. This one is a neutral second. Okay, the one between C and D quarter flat. And then this one is a whole tone. Okay. So it sounds very interesting. This new interval that is possible now with 17 tones. So to show these intervals, these 5 extra intervals or 6 extra intervals, I used quarter flat and quarter sharp accidentals. I'm sure you're familiar with these intervals, but if not, it's like it goes a little bit more sharp than flat. Okay, if you compare it to the real flat, the flat is like a B, and this one is like a looked like a flipped B. And for quarter sharp, it is like a DS with one vertical line. But anyway, that's for the three qualities that we have for the second. If we compare it to the third interval, so the three qualities would be like this. This one is the one between C and E flat, or minor third. This one would be a neutral third between E quarter flat and C. And then the one between C and E is already familiar with for you. So, sorry, this one. So, let's listen to the neutral third again. You see how different is the feeling of that sound. So it is like it is a very commonplace interval that you can find in Persian and Arabic music, which is like not compatible with any triad chords that you have in Western music. So you cannot accompany this interval with either of those chords. It would be very contradictory. It would generate a very annoying sound if you use either minor or major third at the same time with this interval. But it's very applicable in Persian music and Arabic music. Other than this, I can show you some examples of tetrachords that we have. So to let you know, we have every tetrachord. Actually, we have 8 tetrachords in total in Persian and Arabic music. Each one having a different sounding and different quality, or different spice, so to speak, as the Turkish people call it. So I had the collection of the intervals somewhere. Maybe I can find it and show it to you. So there's a famous one here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So let's start from the beginning. So this one is composed of a whole tone, another whole tone, and a semitone. So it is very similar to the first 4 notes of the major scale, the first tetrachord of the major scale. The other one could be this one, starting with a semitone followed by 2 tones, which is very similar to the first 4 notes of the Phrygian scale, as you call it. And then the other one is a whole tone followed by a semitone and another whole tone, which is similar to the first 4 notes of the minor scale. That's it for the combination of the whole tone and semitone. But after that, we can have another combinations as well, right? So this one is very famous and very popular. So in this one, we have a neutral tone followed by another neutral tone and a whole tone. So it sounds very interesting. It is like C, D quarter flat, E flat, and then F. So we call it shur in Persian music. In old Persian music, it was called Nowruz. There's the flipped version of the same tetrachord, starting with a whole tone and followed by 2 neutral tones. So it would be C, D natural, and then what? Then E quarter flat, and then F. This one is also very famous and popular. It is called Bayotetork in Persian music. It was called Rast in old Persian music. I think that's the same. It has the same title in today's Arabic music as well. Anyways, there are some more complicated versions or variations, which might be a little bit too much for the first presentation. But anyway, I'm sure you got the idea, and that's how it works in general. So for the rest of the session, maybe I can speak a little bit about the limits that we have in Persian music. So I studied it a lot in my thesis through the help of my supervisor and the reader of my thesis. So we came across the decision that, in theory at least, the tones that we have in Persian music is a combination of the Pythagorean fifth and some ratios from the 13th partial of the natural harmonic series. So in that sense, we can say the Persian music is a 13 limit music. Although in Arabic music we can have like some intervals from the 11th partial, so it could be seen as a 11 limit music in that sense. If you are familiar with the musicologist called Harry Parch, he have studied these two limits and the intervals, possible intervals that we can have using these two limits. It would be very interesting for you if you study his work. So I invite you to listen to a real traditional Persian music piece, which is like a reissue of a old Persian song or something. So the main scale of the song is called Mahur in Persian music, which is something similar to the major scale in Western music, but in the middle a lot of small mode changes would happen, or the modulations, so to speak, would happen between the tetrachords. So let me show the first diagram that I showed you today again. So what happens to the melodic modal progression of the song is that usually the melody starts wandering around the centric tone here, but gradually when the melody goes up, so there's a moment that it reaches to the octave. So in that moment the octave would be considered as the second centric tone of the scale, or second meze, or second shahed of the scale. So there are a few getting back and forth around that note as well, and then after the climax the melody gradually goes down and reaches to the first center or first shahed of the scale. It is very interesting. So I try to show the mode changes or the tetrachord changes whenever it happens throughout the song, so you can follow it easily by looking at the diagram and listening to the song. So that's it, pretty much it. I invite you to listen to the song, and please don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions, or if you need more explanations on any topics that I elaborated today. I would be happy to explain more. And that's it. Thank you all, and see you soon. Bye bye. If you had any questions, leave me some comments, and please make sure to like and subscribe and share this video with those interested in Persian music. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video.